Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Philly Factor. I'm your host, Paul Perello, and I'm glad that we have with us a favorite guest to the program. Thom Nickels joins us because he has a new book that is coming out, and it deals with a dark chapter in contemporary Philadelphia history. Thom, first of all, thank you for being with us, and congratulations on the new book. If congratulations are in order, given the topic of the book.
Thank you, Paul. It's good to be here again, even though it is via Zoom, but it's still good to be here.
Yeah, this new world that we are in.
Yes.
The name of the book, I should mention here at the get-go, is Death in Philadelphia, and it deals with the death of a female jogger in the upscale Rittenhouse Square neighborhood of Philadelphia back in 1995. It was a brutal attack, and Thom, when this came across my desk, the first thing I thought of was what prompted you to take the deep dive into this particular case, the death of this jogger on November 2nd, 1995.
Well, for several reasons, Paul. I lived across the street at 21st and Pine. I was there when the body was discovered. I basically was there before the police arrived. I was coming home from a very early part-time job. The man with the dog who actually discovered the body, I had known him, so we said good morning. He seemed to have a very worried and anxious look on his face. And I asked him what was wrong, and he said that there was a person in the stairwell, and he mentioned that it was an injured person. I guess he didn't know. So I was tempted at the time to look into the stairwell. I decided not to because I thought if it was an injured person, it would be kind of rude to look down in on their injury. So I stayed away. But at that moment, I think about 8 or 9 squad cars just came racing up 21st Street and came to a stop. And that's when, the police then got out and went to the stairwell. And, you can tell when the way a police officer looks down into a scene like that, how horrific it is. You can just gauge the intensity of their stare. And, from that, it was then, it became a neighborhood event. A lot of people gathered. It took a while before they were able to remove the body. And there was a large crowd there. And everybody just came out of their houses. And it built from there.
Yeah. The year is 1995, November 2nd, to be exact. This female jogger that is attacked and found at the bottom of this stairwell, it really sent shockwaves not only through that particular area of Center City, Philadelphia, but I guess right across the region. And I think it's safe to say by today's standards that any murder is one murder too many. We have sort of become I hate to say, ignorant to the fact that these types of deaths happen on a recurring basis across Philadelphia. But back in 1995, given the circumstances surrounding this death, it was quite the story because this was a female jogger. She was not from Philadelphia. She had moved, I believe, from the Midwest to Philadelphia, and at a time where the murder rate was not out of control like it is today, it really sent shockwaves throughout the entire region, so much so that the mayor at the time, in detailing the horrific crime, actually wept because of the events that surrounded the death of this young woman.
That's true. 95 was the year of the jogger, as it were. There were a lot of people jogging everywhere in the city. Washington Square, Rittenhouse Square, up and down Pine Street. From my window on Pine Street, I would see joggers all day long. And I often passed Kimberly Ernest when she would jog on her way down to the river and up from the river. It was usually in the afternoon. I never saw her jog in the early morning. as she did this time. But certainly, since jogging was considered a benign, healthy, almost crime-free enterprise, as it were, the murder really captured the public's heart. And I guess I first got wind of this when I saw the slow building of a shrine outside the stairwell, and it climbed in intensity over a period of several days until it looked like a small outdoor cathedral, literally with flowers and teddy bears and rosary beads, and people would just stop in their cars and come out and cross themselves and say a prayer. And it was phenomenal, the constant show of emotion and sorrow, and the way that this built, it just ran away with itself.
Let's talk about the victim, Kimberly Ernest. I mean, as I said, she was not a native Philadelphian. She came from the Midwest, I believe, and came here. Did she come here for work? Was the
She did. She wanted to go to paralegal school. At first, she thought that she wanted to become a lawyer. She had long conversations with her mother about that, and she then later told her mother, Dorothy, that she had friends who had gone to law school, and they told her how awful it was. And she said that she was having second thoughts. So it was her mother, in fact, who said, well, why don't you become a paralegal? And then you can decide if you like it, you can proceed from there. She also worked for another company before she worked for the law firm that she was a part of during the time of her murder. But she had traveled internationally prior to this. She had been in Australia on some kind of a volunteer mission where people often mistook her for Nicole Kidman. And she would often talk to her mother that she got a great kick out of being mistaken for Nicole Kidman. She came to Philadelphia. She had an apartment at 12th and Spruce. And she had this regime of jogging before work. And so, whether she got up at 5 a.m. or 5:30, but her path was usually to jog down to the Schuylkill River, or what they call Judy Garland Park, and she would jog back up, usually along Pine Street. And as I said, I never saw her jog in the morning, but I was up at that hour all of the time. The morning of the murder, however, before my alarm clock went off, I was shaken awake. A chorus of loud screams outside my window on Pine Street woke me up. And it was quite a shock because I just bolted straight up in bed with the thought, what was that, ran through my head. And, at that time, there were often Penn students who would party late into the night. And sometimes they would be very drunk, and you could hear them, especially on the weekends. Well, when you jolt straight up in bed like that, when you don't hear any kind of a follow-up shout, you just assume it's just the voices of the city. So I went back to sleep. In retrospect, of course, I definitely feel that this chorus of panicked screams was related to the murder.
So given this, I can't say a personal connection, but sort of being on the sidelines of where this murder occurred, is that what sparked you to get so involved in investigating the case and bringing light to this murder? Because look, there are similar deaths that have occurred since 1995 and prior to 1995. But what was the thing that said to Thom Nickels, I need to take this deeper dive. I need to get to the bottom of this. I got to figure out who was responsible. Was it that moment of jumping up in bed and sort of being a bystander almost to Kimberly's death?
So I think with me, it was a combination of these screams that I heard from the very, very beginning. It was almost like a bugle call. The fact that I lived across the street, the fact that I was there when the body was discovered. And strangely enough, after that, when they caught two of the suspects initially, Richard Wise and Robert Hack, their pictures were in the Daily News. And one of them I had noticed as a fellow who used to prance up and down Pine Street and go throughout the city in the summertime without his shirt. And he was, let's just say he was a major troublemaker. I had an encounter with him on my way home from work one morning. I think I looked at him too long or in the wrong way, according to him. And he immediately lashed out and threatened me. And it was such a reaction that you knew automatically that this poor guy was a sociopath. And it was something that I never forgot. And when I saw this picture, I thought, this is the same one who almost tackled me for giving him the wrong look. And so then I really became interested in the case because I had had an experience with her killer, essentially. And then, of course, news reports came out that these two were culprits in two gay bashings in the city. One, they had attacked a guy who came home from shopping, and they used one of the tuna cans that he had purchased to attack him and bent the tuna can. And they then pulled two gay guys out of a parked car. They were actually partners. I think they were smooching or something. So they took them out and they beat them. They did not prosecute because they had high-level jobs and they were not ready to be outed. So they let the case slide. Another thing that was amazing to me was the fact that after Kimberly's death, one of the men that I knew, and I was in a very casual dating thing then, one of the men that I was seeing was one of Kimberly's boyfriends. And this just sent the whole Twilight Zone factor over the moon. And so we talked about Kimberly. And so that was yet another thing. There was yet another thing when Fred Ambrose and Company, a law firm in Ballackinwood, after Wise and Hack were found not guilty because of the DNA mismatch and because they accused the police of beating a confession out of them, a law firm in Ballackinwood accused the son of a very famous Center City lawyer of the murder. And I also knew him. So this was 6 degrees of separation multiplied by 100. And so I wound up testifying in court, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Did they finally arrest the right person or persons for Kimberly's death, or is this case still unsolved in Philadelphia?
Well, Hack and Wise were in fact arrested. There were initial confessions. They were all written down. One of my interviews was with Tom Augustine, who was the Philadelphia detective who took over the case almost by default, but that's another story. He interviewed Hack and he got a confession out of Hack and it was signed. Later, these confessions, both of the guys claimed that they were beaten and that they were forced confessions. They were made to sign blank pieces of paper, which was not entirely unbelievable to the city at that time, because unfortunately, the Philadelphia police, there were some instances in which this happened. And so I think very, very tragically, this is why the jury was so quick to dismiss, aside from the whole DNA mismatch. When I say DNA mismatch, I mean that Kimberly was killed and there was an attempted rape of sorts in the stairwell or in the back of Hack's car I'm not sure where that may have occurred, but that was an attempted rape because both of them were so stoned on drugs that would not have been possible.
So I want to mention here the name of the book. It is Death in Philadelphia, The Murder of Kimberly Ernest. And so is this one of those cases then, Thom, that remains unsolved and gets sort of put into the cold case, file? And hopefully, I mean, we've seen cases, solved many, many, many decades later here in Philadelphia. But is that what's going to happen to this case of Kimberly Ernest?
Well, I believe, and through a lot of extensive interviews and reading, that Wise and Hack were indeed the real killers. The one that they tried to charge with the case, or the one that Fred Ambos attempted to charge with the murder, John Lambert, was not the killer, although he was a principal player in Philadelphia's underworld night scene, I guess around 17th and Pine. The jury, interestingly enough, when it came time to deliver a verdict, and I heard this through Dorothy Ernest and through another source, Tom Augustine, as well, that when they were going out to make a decision, the foreman was heard to utter the phrase, "We have to come up with a verdict faster than they did with OJ." And of course, the OJ trial had just happened, I think, about a year or two prior. So that was on everybody's mind. We have to remember also that this jury was sequestered, and they don't sequester the juries anymore. And that was, that could make jurors feel very, very nervous and hemmed in and trapped, almost like prisoners, because they were away from their families and loved ones. And so the tendency was to make a decision fast so that they could go back to their normal lives. And I had heard that this jury, they were a very, very disagreeable lot. They couldn't even decide which restaurant to order food from. They were always feuding, always in total disagreement. So, but I think that most people who study this case know for a fact that Wise and Hack were guilty. Although, when I interviewed John Lambert's father, Jay Lambert, he told me that he wasn't so sure that Wise and Hack were the guilty ones, but he believes that the killer is still out there. But then he also admitted that he knew nothing about Wise and Hack, and he has not been following the case for years. So that kind of, put a null and void stamp over that. Wise, incidentally, died in 2016, and he died in prison. Hack is still alive.
That was, you sort of took the thunder out of my question, because I was going to ask, as part of your research in writing this book, did you talk to the two of them? Any chance of talking with the other guy involved in this case?
Paul, that would have been a truly great thing. I did find out about 10 to 11 months ago where Hack was living, and oddly enough, it's not too far from where I live. It's in the Fishtown area. And this person jokingly said to me, "I know Hack, and would you like an interview with him?" And like, he would actually sit down and talk to me. I don't think so. But apparently he's alive and well and hangs out in the Fishtown area, specifically Front and Girard.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But I have not seen him. I have not seen him.
What is your hope, or what is your intention as a result of writing this book? Is it to sort of put this chapter of an unsolved case or solved case to bed? Is it to put your own personal connection to this case to bed? Or is it to renew interest or stir up new interest in this case, or to bring light to this dark chapter of Philadelphia history in the death of this jogger?
Well, I think for me, one of the things that got my attention was the fact that a lot of the news media, when they reported on Kimberly's death, concentrated on her love life. And it was the fact that she had more than one boyfriend, shall we say. The fact that she did not follow a conventional, narrow, monogamous path. And so there was a sensationalistic aspect to the reporting, almost as if to suggest that, well, when you lead this kind of a wild life, what else can you expect? And that was very, very disturbing. Quite a lot had been written about that at the time. And in the book, I also mention a diary that Kimberly kept. And basically, as anyone who would keep a diary, if things happen to you, you're going to record that you're seeing this person and that person. But even that was made out to be like some salacious record keeping, Robinson Crusoe scorecard. And so as I bring out in the book, I talk about how a lot of writers have recorded both good and bad experiences in journals and diaries. When I did interview Dorothy, she said that the city still has Kimberly's sneakers, and that it's her wish that they be examined for possible DNA evidence. Just as a postscript, as a final postscript and tie-up event to this. For me, it was a book that had haunted me for years because I had all of these court transcripts and this story that I had only written about for the HuffPost and various local papers, but had never really fleshed out to a large degree.
I have to ask, we're short on time here. We have a few minutes left, but did you, what is the reaction of Kimberly's mother to the end result of your book? Has she seen it? Has she read it? And what's her opinion, if anything, about the book?
She has not read it yet. It was a little emotional talking to Dorothy. We did two or three telephone interviews. She's still pretty much heartbroken after all of these years. And she said that it was her wish that the book would do honor to her daughter's memory. And I certainly hope that's true. I would not want to give any more heartbreak to a woman like that. She was treated very well by the city, and the detectives that I talked to all mentioned what a classy woman she is and how she handled herself then. So, I would certainly just want that to be the case. Yeah.
You have always brought interesting stories to life, not only here in this program, but online in publications. What is next for you after this book, Thom?
Oh, Paul, I really don't know. Probably lots of journalism, and again, a book maybe about my CO years, but I don't know. Yeah. That's an unknown.
Sure. Well, the book is available where most books are sold. It's available at Barnes & Noble. It's available online at Amazon and outlets like that. Again, the name of the book is Death in Philadelphia, The Murder of Kimberly Ernest by Thom Nickels. And Thom, I want to thank you for your time. Always a pleasure to have you here on the program. I want to wish you continued success, best of luck, and a great job on this book.
Thank you, Paul, very much. Nice to be with you again. Thank you.
Until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for watching The Philly Factor. I'm your host, Paul Perrella. We'll see you the next time around.